welcome to What Cheer Writers Club, a nonprofit serving creators like yourself across Rhode Island. Hello to our virtual audience as well. I'm Jody Vinson. I'm the program manager at the club. Thanks for being here at Publish Yourself, a panel on self-publishing on Kindle and beyond. So before I introduce our self-publishing experts, I wanted to mention the next seminar that we'll be holding at the club, which is Publicity and Press for Authors. So once you have published a book, or even before that, you can come on Saturday, July 13th at 1 p.m. and learn about, from some PR experts about self-promotion and getting the word out about your work. And a note that our monthly member meetup will not be taking place in July because it's the 4th, so enjoy your holiday. The next one will be August 1st. So I'd like to introduce our panel, and then each one of the panelists will share from their area of expertise about an aspect of self-publishing before taking your questions. We will have plenty of time for discussion and questions, and then a little bit of networking afterwards as well. All right, so we'll start with Mike Squatrito down here at the end on the right. Mike has been writing the Overlord series for over 20 years. He currently lives in Tiverton, Rhode Island. He speaks at elementary, middle, and high schools and colleges, local libraries, and writers groups, where his sincere hope is to inspire everyone he meets to be creative and follow their dreams. He's also the vice president of the Association of Rhode Island Authors. Karen will then be speaking next. Karen is here on my left, my right. Karen Greco studied playwriting in college, but a lifelong obsession with Exorcist and Dracula drew her to urban fantasy, where she decapitates characters with impunity. Titles in her Hell's Bell series include Hell's Bell, Tainted Blood, and Steel City Blues. She wrote contemporary romance for a small press under the pen name Gillian Sterling, and is currently rewriting and expanding those books for re-release. Her professional writing career began in beauty and fitness editorial for various monthly glossy magazines before she transitioned into entertainment publicity. Robert Isenberg is next to Karen. He's worked as a freelance writer for nearly 20 years. He's the author of several books, including The Green Season, about his time as a journalist in Costa Rica. He is currently a staff writer for Providence Monthly, where he previously served as a contributing editor. Feel free to learn more at robertisenberg.net. And Steve Porter, next to Robert, is the author of 2 novels, the critically acclaimed Southie crime thriller, Confessions of the Meek and Valiant, and the award-winning historical novel, Manasseh. I knew I was going to get that pronunciation. Inspired by the rich history of Block Island. He's the co-author of Scared to Death, Do It Anyway, a guide for individuals who suffer from anxiety and panic attacks. And he speaks frequently to schools and libraries about his books, trends in independent publishing, and on special topics in writing and book marketing. He and his wife Dawn own Stillwater Books in Pawtucket and Stillwater River Publications. He's the founder and president of the Association of Rhode Island Authors. So thanks to our panelists for being here. We're excited to hear what you have to say. Mike, go ahead and start us off. Yeah.
Okay. Like Jody said, I'm the author of the, let me get these books out, the Overlords Fantasy series. I have 3 right now, and the 4th one is going to come out in October, and that should wrap everything up. And the good news about that is I self-published all of these, so this is going to be my basis for what we talk about today. What I'm going to do is kind of talk about the actual author angle and going into self-publishing, because that's what I did. Like everybody else, how many people here actually have either a book published or are going to self-publish it, or different phases? Right, so everybody's kind of obviously headed to self-publish. One of the first things I always suggest to people is when they think about self-publishing is actually, have you tried the traditional route, query letters to agents and things like that? Because I did, and I probably did it about 50, 60, 70 times, and I got frustrated over a year's worth of time, and then I decided to self-publish. So back in around 2002, 2003, there wasn't a lot of companies out there as there are now. And I actually went with iUniverse at the time. I don't suggest to do that now, but at the time there wasn't too many things to do, and I couldn't get traditionally published, so I went that way. But a couple of things you need to really know. Self-publishing had a stigma that, well, you self-published because you couldn't get published. And that may have been true back in the day, but not anymore. There's a lot of good work out there, and what a lot of the traditional publicists are trying to do is, they're trying to make money, so they try to read the market and what's going to go on, and a lot of really, really good books don't get picked up. And with self-publishing, we can now have a voice and we can get out there. But there are things that you do need to do. I mean, you can't just write your story and say, okay, I went from beginning to end, I got 500 pages, I'm going to make a book and I'm going to sell it. Well, that's good. That's a good start. That's not what you should do. Once you get it done, you really should do your due diligence. For my books, I use Microsoft Word. I know there's other applications out there you can use, but I have a professional artist. This guy's out of LA. He's actually a graphic design person, and I canvassed a lot of people to try and find out if somebody would do it for $250, and I got 50, 60, I had to stop responses. So when people say, yeah, you gotta spend $1,000 for cover art, it's not true. You can find good cover art. I'll let you guys look at the book later, but I formatted everything myself, which is not the easiest thing to do. If you don't know Microsoft Word, there's a lot of guidelines you have to do. So that may be something that you can do. If not, there are a lot of people that can help with that, and we're gonna try to do everything for free, but sometimes we can't do everything for free. One of the most important things I suggest is to hire a professional editor at some point in your process. Once you go through your work so many times, you tend to miss things. You know what you're talking about, but you don't know if the audience and your fans are going to pick it up. And without an editor, it's a recipe for disaster. So I would highly suggest getting an editor. And if you have any illustrations to be done, if you don't do them yourself, you should hire a professional illustrator to do that as well. So all those different pieces, the manuscript, the editor, the formatting, the cover design, and then of course you have all the fun stuff. Hey, you gotta have a picture of yourself, I just got new author photos done. I did a photo shoot. You gotta set up all your copyrights and everything, the acknowledgements, dedications, all that kind of stuff. So there's other things you gotta think about in the book as well. But it can be done. I mean, if I could do it, everybody can do it. I am an engineer, so I am a little bit better with software and stuff like that. So I do understand Microsoft Word pretty well, and I was able to do all that. But I went, after iUniverse, I got rid of them and I went my own way because the books were way too expensive for me to buy. So I went at the time to CreateSpace, which was Amazon's self-publishing wing, and I think now that KDP published it, they reel that in. So these 3 books were done on CreateSpace, and my new one that's going to come out, I'm probably going to start that effort in July to upload it to KDP. So I'm assuming it shouldn't be too hard. It should be like it was with CreateSpace, but I'm sure there'll be some caveats that are a little bit different. And if people haven't done self-publishing before, theoretically, it should be pretty simple. It's basically you take your formatted manuscript, you upload it to the site, you upload your author photo, upload the book cover design based on all of the qualifications that the Amazon's going to need, and then you start filling in all of the other things, the title of the book, an ISBN number if you have one, or if you need another one, if you want to use theirs. What kind of book do you want? 6x9? Is it going to be illustrated? Is it going to be glossy pages? Is it going to be color? You have to figure that out as well. And then all the parts that you need to put, like the, like I said, the title is going to go on wherever, and then you're going to have a description in the back, so people can pick up the book and say, okay, a little book about what your book is about, and things like that. So all those pieces are pretty easy to do. It sounds big, it sounds like a lot, but if you break it down into smaller pieces, you'll be able to do this. But the most important thing, again, get things edited, have a lot of professional work done. I mean, you really shouldn't break the bank. I mean, you can really get an editor for a decent price. You can get cover art design that's good for a decent price. And if you can do a lot of things yourself, you're gonna save a lot of money that way too. If you're not computer savvy, there are other things you can do. I do have a self-publishing consultancy now because, like Jody said, I've been writing these books for 20 years. So I started way back on a non-Windows machine in 1992, an IBM DOS-based computer with WordPerfect. And that's what the first book started on. It migrated, obviously, onto Microsoft Word. But it took me a long time because, like I said before, I'm an engineer, so I write. I used to write, technically, and that's not good for a fantasy adventure. You want to be very creative. And I had to really learn to write right. I had a good story that was just like technical, so I had to tear that apart and be creative, which is good because I'm a Libra, because I can split. I formed this self-publishing consultancy to help people at the author level. Steve is a business, and he'll talk about that. But on a author level, I would be the expert to help you get to the next point, to get you to the point where maybe you want to go do publication, or lead you to an artist, lead you to an editor, help you with your manuscript, to get it to a point where you can say, okay, now I need to go to the next step. I just don't have enough time to do other people's books, because engineering work is very time consuming and pays the bills pretty well. So I decided not to be a publisher, because this is your baby, and you need someone there to be on it 100% of the time. So I'll let other people do that. But I'm more than happy to help people get to the point where they can get to the next level. So I'm going to let the other guys talk, but the one thing I want you to all come away with is, if you're going to self-publish a book, definitely do all your due diligence, like I said. Get an editor, get it formatted correctly, get an artist to do a good cover design, because you do judge a book by its cover. You do. And if you don't have a really good cover, it may get glossed over. So get that, and then you can do it yourself too.
Great. Thanks, Amy. Karen, do you want to go ahead and talk about
Sure,
Can you hold up your books?
I could, well, this is the old cover. But because I'm talking about ebooks, I didn't bring all of them. I have the Hellspell series, and 4 books now in that series. Released a novella around the holidays. So to kind of piggyback on some great stuff that Michael was talking about, ebooks. Amazon Kindle was the big game changer that came out in 2007, and that actually gave authors a place to put their books that wasn't iUniverse, that wasn't extraordinarily expensive, and that wasn't putting the financial onus on the author. Because if I remember correctly, with iUniverse, you'd have to have X amount printed.
Oh yeah.
And then you were responsible for selling them, right? Like it was like, you had to have it in your garage, or
My book was listed. I'm not Stephen King. My book was listed on iUniverse for $24.99.
Yeah.
And it cost me $13 and change to buy the book as a writer, and then throw in shipping and stuff.
And just to sort of point out that sort of the stigma of self-publishing, which still exists in certain places, James Patterson actually sold books out of the back of his car. I believe it was James Patterson that did that, and he actually was an ad guy and took out a full-page ad of the New York Times to advertise his books, and that's actually how he made it. So just, keep that in mind. But no, you don't have to do that now, which is awesome. You don't have to pay a lot. This is really, open this thing up. We don't have gatekeepers anymore, which I think is a really, really, really great thing, particularly for creatives. So for ebooks, Kindle is the big one. I'll be honest, that's where I make most of my money, is with Amazon. But you also have, Apple has their iBooks platform. There's a platform called Kobo that recently merged with Walmart. So I think maybe about a year ago. So now my ebooks are sold in Walmart. If you go to Walmart's homepage, it hasn't. I thought it would be bigger than it was, but it wasn't as big as I thought. But maybe they're working on it. There's also Barnes & Noble has their Nook, although I believe that is now independently owned. They sort of spun that off from the publishing division, and that's a mess. Barnes & Noble's a mess right now. So they just got bought out by some hedge fund people. And then there's Google, which the Google store is actually very, very hard to get in on your own. There's actually a waiting list if you want to be a part of the Google Play universe. So it's all very easy actually to get, with the exception of Google, but even Google, there's a way in. If you go to an organization or a company called Draft to Digital, I believe that they can get you into the Google door. Draft to Digital kind of exists as a place where you can go upload your book once and they will do the distribution for you. I do my own distribution because I like to maintain control over it. I do a lot of promotions. It's easier for me to change my price very quickly. I don't have a lag time. I want to be able to easily change my covers, that sort of thing. So I tend to do it myself, but if you need a little extra help, if you don't want to take the time, there are tons and tons of places where you can go and get help. Draft to Digital will take a percentage of your royalties, but if you don't sell anything, they don't make anything, so it doesn't cost you anything up front, which is really, really cool. But this stuff wasn't around when I started. I put out my first book in 2013, and so I was doing my own formatting. Oh my God, that was awful. I mean, I had a book done, I had it edited, I had the cover, I had everything. And I just was like getting to that ebook formatting part, and I was like, I quit. I'm not doing this. I can't. But now there's, if you're on Mac, there's an awesome program called Vellum, and you just upload your file, and it will come out as like this beautiful ebook. It goes through all formats, so you have because this is the pain, right? Each marketplace, each storefront, you have to have a different sort of like, Microsoft Word versus PDF versus, it's a slightly different format of a book. So Kindle is like, I don't even remember what the MOBI or something, and then the Mobi, and then with the regular ebooks, it's an EPUB. Most stores take EPUB except for Kindle. So it's great because Vellum will just spit your book out and all these different, so you don't have to worry about it. It's so easy now, guys. It's so easy. But you do need to make this decision because Kindle has, or Amazon offers that for readers, $9.99 a month. They have access to Kindle's library.
KU.
The KU. As a writer, I had my books in KU.
Kindle Unlimited.
Yeah, and so basically as an author, you can put your books in KU, but you cannot have your books anyplace else. You can have physical books for sale other places, but your ebook has to remain exclusive with Kindle. So when they first had KU, I think I had one book out and the second was coming out. When they started Kindle Unlimited, and I put my books in because, like I said, Kindle is where the bulk of the authors make their money, particularly if you're writing in certain genres. And if you are selling ebooks, I do recommend, if you do want to make a living at this, I do recommend writing in certain genres that are marketable to Kindle's readers. The original inception, the way that they were paying authors in KU originally was fantastic. I actually made more on a borrow than I did on a sale. It's amazing. I actually could have quit my day job at that point. So yeah, it was pretty amazing. And then they changed it from borrows to page reads, And everybody saw their income kind of go down from that. And there were some weird things going on within Amazon, and a lot of like the gaming of the system. It gets all gossipy and weird. Started happening, and a lot of authors were getting shut out. Like Amazon will shut your account down if you're doing something nefarious, or they suspect you're doing something nefarious. They will shut you down, and that's it. And you have to appeal. There's no process of, oh, we think you might have done this thing, and can we talk about that? No, they just shut you down. So you need to be ready for that. So this was sort of going on. I said, I think I'm going to go wide and not sort of have all my eggs in Amazon's basket. But this is, it's a very personal choice. It is really up to you. But I will say, I don't know anybody that personally that this has happened to. It's all kind of, this writer over here says this, it's, so I mean, when you think about the, 5 million, 6 million titles are published on Kindle, maybe a handful of authors are having issues. And it seems to be mostly with people that are in Kindle Unlimited, because that's the easiest way to game the system, is with the page reads. So yeah, I'm trying to think what else. It's such a huge topic, it's hard to sort of know what you guys might need to know. So I think, if you have questions for the Q&A part, I'm happy to answer whatever, but that's kind of the basis of the ebook world out there.
So, thank you, Karen. Yeah. Robert, do you want to?
Yeah, I've been working primarily as a journalist for 20 years or so, and I love it. I loved being a freelancer. I love now being a staff writer. It's great, and it's great training for how to treat writing as a business, but also working with a wide variety of editors and understanding that everyone's needs are different. Testing your own malleability. I've worked in the theater as well. I've been a faculty member, an adjunct instructor at various universities. I'm a very sociable person, and I really like connecting with people on every imaginable level, but particularly with literary arts, and also the economics of it I find really interesting. So, I spent 15 of those years in Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh is a very literary city. Contrast its reputation, maybe. Michael Chabon, August Wilson, Rachel Carson, all of these people found their voice in Pittsburgh, and it's just a very inspiring place to be. It doesn't have many commercial presses, but it has a lot of small presses. And the one that I ended up working with was one of the more revered. It's Pulitzer nominated. It's always they always have lines out the door at AWP. They're just a very well-known publisher, mostly of literary books, mostly of poetry. I had written a travelogue, a nonfiction travelogue about trying to find a refugee in Bosnia. It was a lot of fun to write. I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun to research because it was just taking buses through the Balkans, and it was one of the more exciting adventures of my life. Became this manuscript that I really liked, and it ended up shortlisted for the Grey Wolf Nonfiction Prize. It didn't win, but it was in the top 5 of several hundred manuscripts. So I was like, this is a tremendous vote of confidence. I feel very good about this. This is like the height of a young nonfiction writer's experience, and I felt very good about sort of dropping hints about this advent to the publisher of this publisher, whom I happen to know, and as I recall, he was drinking coffee, and I'm like, oh, hey, how's it going? Hey, this just got shortlisted for this prize, pretty cool, huh? And then I walked off. Basically, he ended up asking me about it, which was exactly what I wanted him to do. So we had a very nice conversation, and I'll tell you now, before I get into any of the negative parts, that I have no regrets. It was a great first book experience. They did a lot for me. This was their first nonfiction title ever. Oh. It was a huge risk that they took, and it was very, very exciting. And I'm very, very grateful to them. That said, I don't like this cover, which is absurd because I took the photo. I don't like that I had to write my own back matter. I don't like that there are these weird spaces in between paragraphs. I don't like the font. I don't like that the photographs have these really like irritating captions that I didn't write. There are just a lot of like little tiny nitpicky things that I found very frustrating. It's also listed at $20 a copy. It's not even 20 pages long, and it's a paperback. I was like, how can I possibly sell that? I wouldn't buy my book for $20 a copy. And finally, as I was going in to sign the contract, they mentioned casually, as if we had had this conversation before, and I swear to God we had not. And of course, you'll buy 150 copies of books. And that was exactly my expression, actually. It's like, I was just like, what? Like there was no advance. There was very little discussion. Like it was embedded in the language, like what my royalties would be, but there was no discussion of that. It was just like, of course you will buy at cost 150 copies of your own book, which amounted to about $1,600. And luckily they had a payment plan already set up, $300 a month for a certain amount of time, and they said that this would essentially like sort of stimulate my my participation in the selling of the book. And I was like, that is bullshit, but I'm gonna sign anyway because it's my first book. Of course, like when you're a first-time author, you are basically desperate for everything to go through, and they know that. So I was shocked and very, very disappointed. And now, as a soon-to-be graduated MFA'er, I was suddenly $1,600 in debt to my own publisher, and I found that very, very unsettling. And I was like, well, why am I going the traditional route? Like and it was basically the name, and it was a lot of the talent, and I had to kind of remind myself of that, but it was a bad deal. And it put me in competition with them, and to this day, I will never understand why they did that. It was so confusing to me. So I effectively had to undercut them everywhere I could. I used all my resources in Pittsburgh, bookstores, universities. I'd call them and be like, buy from me, don't buy from your publisher, which was so weird. It was like you're effectively fighting against these other people, trying to create a monopoly for yourself. And it just created this unnecessary stress. So I learned through a negative example a lot of things that I knew I did not want to deal with in the future. I have no personal problems with small presses, literary presses. I've worked with them since, but I've learned a lot in terms of what to expect and what to ask. And in terms of commercial work, I've worked with agents before. It never really came to anything, and that was another side note, small frustration, is that you bring an idea that you really care about, and one of them was a nonfiction book, and it was like, this is something that I've done. It's half written, it's first person, and it's about my experience working as a standardized patient at a medical school. All of it is legal, all of it is cool, I've vetted everything, but this is like the true story as I'm allowed to tell it, having worked in a medical school. And this agent was like, yeah, this is really great, but what if you added a character like this, and what if you had this happen? I'm just like, it's a nonfiction book. This really happened. It's like, well, what if there's a romantic interest? And I'm like, I don't think my wife would like that. Like, what are you doing? This is so weird. And like, I realized how, like, as cool as agents can be, like how dumb they can be. Like they're constantly thinking in terms of the market. They're constantly thinking in terms of what's trendy. And it can be worse than Twitter. It's just like very like dogs chasing cars. So, and I was just like, I don't want to work with people like that. That's really absurd. I could in the future, but my understanding is that authors who are happy, who are successful in the commercial realm, work with editors and agents and publishers that they trust and they mesh with and who really understand them. And I've met those people before, but they're usually at a small literary level. And there's usually something that there's some sort of something that I have to give up in order to make it happen. So this all leads to this project I started writing for fun. And it was these pulp fiction stories that take place in the 1920s. I call it Dorothy Parker Meets the X-Files. It's a lot of fun. It's called The Adventures of Elizabeth Crown. I was doing it for my own pleasure, and then realized that as a professional writer, I'm like psychologically incapable of doing anything for my own pleasure. I have to have somebody read it. So I wanted to put together a book, and I didn't care what happened to it in that moment. I just wanted it to be exactly what I wanted it to be and make it available. And that's what's so nice about self-publishing, especially through Amazon. And I'm going to side note, it's not a perfect company, to put it mildly. And they've done a lot of terrible things to a lot of people. My uncle liked working in their warehouse in Seattle, so like it can't be all bad. But like you do sort of like make a deal with the devil. That's something that a lot of people wrestle with, and I have in the past as well. But if you do make that deal with the devil, you can theoretically get exactly what you want. This cover is exactly what I want. The back matter I wrote because I knew I was going to have to. The layout, of course, is exactly what I want because like you, I designed it myself. Everything in it, down to the paper quality, down to to every little microscopic detail is the way I wanted it to be, which is great. And it's one of the great advantages of it. And I didn't have to make any concessions. At the same time, I didn't have anyone vouching for me. This press is like, Backpack Media is something I registered myself in Arizona. I don't think it even exists anymore. You don't have that name behind you, and there still is, even if not a stigma, you don't have the momentum of a real name if you do it yourself. And that is a major, major sacrifice, even as things are being democratized. Sometimes it works very well. Sometimes, as in my case, I needed to plant the seed and have it germinate. I think I sold 6 copies. And then later sold like 10 hard copies at various readings, so 16 copies in total, which is absurd. Then I started recording it as a podcast serial, and it's basically an audiobook with moody music, and now I'm approaching 50,000 downloads all over the world. And I realized that's the format that works. I'm a performative person, I've worked as a playwright, like this is where I've hit pay dirt. So even though this book didn't sell immediately, now it's starting to pick up because it's tied to something else that people do like. And they're like, oh great, this is great. Because they like the audio format already, I was very eager to turn it into an audiobook, which you can also do through ACX, which is a division of Amazon. So you can do not just the publishing of the book, but you can turn it into this multimedia enterprise. And that's sort of what it became, and has continued to become, is how much can you do with the internet and publishing tools. And I've been having a blast. I will probably never break even, but at this point it's, that's okay, because I haven't actually, as they've mentioned, like I haven't spent very much. It's just, it is self-sustaining in its own way. It's like, oh great, like I've hit this certain point, I have this amount of time, I have this amount of budget, and I can kind of create this next little wing of it and see how it works out. And you don't have the pressure of someone in a corporate office in New York saying like, so did it work? Did you sell 50,000 copies? It's like, well, no, okay, your career is done. You don't have to worry about that. You can just sort of gradually branch out. I'm a start small, gradually build kind of person. I'm in exactly the right environment for it, I think. That's how What Year started. And it's very comfortable for me, and I'm very happy with it. And if I go the commercial route someday in the future, I'm sure I'll love that too, but for very different reasons.
Great, thank you, Robert.
That's actually a great segue.
Woohoo!
Some of the topics, glad we planned work that out.
Totally.
Because I wanted to kind of address some of the kind of the business elements and the business aspects of being an independent author. Now, when I left school as an English major, I did what every English major does when they leave school, which is go into retail. But I had at least the foresight to go into book selling. And so I started at a couple of cents over minimum wage unloading trucks for Walden Books. And to fast forward a little bit, I ended up with the best job ever, because I was the marketing director for 10 years for 176 different bookstores. And we went the entire East Coast from Maine to Maryland. So I had to do all the advertising, promotions, I could do catalogs, I got to dabble with radio, dabble with television, sell books that way. What I really got known for was I had to do all the big celebrity book signings. So I got to go on the road with everybody from Regis Philbin to Tanya Tucker to Errol Smith to Doug Flutie and Drew Bledsoe. But those stories cost at least one beer to get to exactly what happened with Stillwater. But my point was that I had the luck to learn the business, the publishing side of it, the book selling side of it, how bookstores interact with publishers and interact with libraries, before I took that leap and self-published my first book. So when I did it, I thought I knew everything. I was the expert. And even all the marketing realities I already knew about, I still had to learn them over again. And I think that was probably the biggest mistake that I see all the different independent writers that I work with. Now through my company, Stillwater River Publications, we've helped just over 100 different authors publish in the last 5 years. And almost all of them come in with that same, you give us the same, we have the same discussion, which is, I just want to get my work out there. That's all I'm interested in. That's my goal. I just want to get my work out there. And I can tell you that that's not hard to do. You can do that. You can get your work out there. And that feeling lasts about a month. Because now you want to make money at this thing. And maybe you'll sit with a group like through the Association of Rhode Island Authors. We do a number of different group signings. And Mike and I have sat next to each other at many. I remember doing one with Sean Fay Wolf, who sat between us. And Mike had 2 or 3 people in front of him. I had 2 or 3 people with me, and Sean had a line down the bottom. And when you're sitting next to someone who's outselling you, and you think your book is better, and it does start to eat at you. And what it comes down to is what your expectations were when you first started. At the beginning, it's I just want to get my book out there. You all as writers spend insane numbers of hours perfecting your craft. You're joining writers clubs, you're working with writers groups, you're revising, rewriting, revising, rewriting, revising, rewriting, getting till you get that perfect piece of writing. And until it's done, you don't give a second thought to what comes next. Because you don't really know how bookstores are going to respond. Because you're going to go skipping and hopping into Barnes & Noble and say, hey, everybody, look, expecting a big hug because you just self-published a couple of books. And they don't give you a big hug when you march into Barnes & Noble trying to do that. Even you'll find your local library that maybe you grew up from across the street from your house. And you've been in there every day your entire life. And you go skipping and hopping in and say, would you carry my book? And I say, well, we have a procedure. You have to submit to the committee. They'll read it and review it, and they'll get back to you on that. And you say, well, what did I miss? Because I thought bookstores and libraries are places where books are loved, and writers are loved, and authors are just embraced, and now I'm one of them. And where we all miss that boat, and I did myself, is that publishing, book selling, it's all a business first. And the publishing industry, the structure of the publishing industry, when you start looking at how wholesalers and retailers and distributors and writers and editors, this connection, that's been like that for probably 200 years. It hasn't changed very much. In fact, it hasn't changed very much up until the advent of 2 real big innovations. One being the ebook, and the second being print-on-demand publishing. And when those 2 things hit, it provided a threat to the establishment. Because now all of us, you go to Amazon's page for Stephen King's new book, it's the same size, shape, and has the same kind of words on it as mine, and Mike's, and everybody's. So now we're first it was kind of an amusement, but it kind of developed into a threat. And even though the narrative in the publishing industry is, just write something great, we'll take care of it. Don't believe it. Don't fall into that trap. The best thing you can do is start that research in how bookstores make their money and what they're looking for in a book. How many books does the average bookstore sell? We start talking about, I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on the numbers, but you start talking about things like inventory turn in a bookstore. A bookstore's inventory turn might be 1 to 1.5 for a successful store, essentially meaning they sell 1 to 1.5 copies of every book in their store in a calendar year. Well, that means if you go walk in with a big box of 20, you're going to, on average, sell 1 to 1.5 from that store that year. So that suddenly, I mean, I can remember running bookstores in my past life, and people would come in and I'd run one now and say, well, you've only sold 3 copies of my book since I dropped it off 2 weeks ago. It's pretty darn good. What are you complaining about? But there are so many different issues that revolve in bookstores and how they interact with authors, how they interact with distributors, that you really need to do some research into. Working with libraries is another one. So when you look at your expectations for your work, and you get beyond the I just want to get it out there, then you have a chance of actually a better chance of success. And you start talking the language that bookstores talk, and the language that libraries talk, and the language that publishers and distributors and wholesalers talk. And now you have a chance to have some success with your work. A lot of authors spend a lot of time trying to find that agent that first time. And everybody has their stories. I know when I started writing, we can compare rejection letters, we all can. At some point, you have to make a decision what you're going to do with your work, really. I chose the independent route. I wanted to write that great American novel since I left school. It took me 15 years to 20 years to put it all together. And at first I was glad I was looking for that agent. But then I realized that being my own business was something I was probably better suited for than most, and I could make some success with it. And I will say, everybody's kind of tiptoeing around it in all their presentations, but I'm happy to wear a t-shirt right now that says Amazon is my friend. They are the best thing that has ever happened to independent publishing or publishing, period. If you can get beyond that they're a big corporate evil empire, they have done more for independent writers, independent publishers, than any company or organization in the history of the world. They have allowed all of us to produce our own work without any judgment and produce it, post it, and sell it. There are issues, of course there are issues, but there are issues with everything we do. So I think that looking at what Amazon can offer in terms of promoting and marketing and selling your work, if that's what you want to do. Marketing is a whole beast in itself. There essentially, in my world, I see 2 different kinds of writers. There are those who like to be out in and amongst the crowds. That's kind of, I am like that, very much like that, where we are out, book signings all the time. I'll sit at a card table at the end of my driveway and wave my book at cars. I don't care.
Are you exaggerating or?
I can tell you a story. I cry. But a lot of other writers, when they hear that M word, marketing, they just want to kind of crawl in a hole. It's like, oh my God, I got to do what? Now that I wrote my book, I just want it to survive on its own. Launch it out there, and everybody will just naturally find out it's wonderful and love it and buy it. And it just doesn't work that way. So many authors I know that just would rather stay in the basement in their pajamas and write and just let the rest of the world take care of that. So you kind of have to find your marketing center. Are you a people person? Does the idea of maybe going to an art festival and talking to people and talking about your work and getting them excited about it? Because you can be very successful building your brand that way. Or you could be that social media person and stay in your pajamas all day and just sit in front of your computer and hammer out ebook sales, hammer out books, sales on print on demand, get involved in all those different social media sites. Because that's what the big publishers are doing. I remember attending a conference, and there was a young girl, she was 16 years old, and she was the guest speaker at this conference because she had just got her 3-book deal with HarperCollins. And she was writing about basically her friends in Southern California and their adventures, running up and down the beaches of, Santa, whatever. But the reason she got And I read her work, and I mean, there's a lot of talent there. I mean, she knew, I felt, not that I'm a great literary critic, but I felt like, okay, it's good. I mean, she's got some stuff here that's interesting. But the reason she got the contract had nothing to do with the quality of the writing. She had 1.2 million followers on Wattpad. And she had 1 million followers on Twitter and on, I don't think it was probably Instagram or Facebook at the time. And what HarperCollins did is a simple math equation. Okay, she's got 1, 2, 3 million followers out there on social media. If we sign her to a contract, what are the odds we'll sell 20,000 copies?
Pretty good.
Pretty darn good, so I think that's a deal I'd make. Then we'll see if it's any good. Because we can always send it over to the editors and they'll take care of that. We can send it to the cover designers and they'll take care of that. We'll send it to the marketing department and they'll take care of that other stuff. You know, and that's kind of how the publishing world, the big publishing world thinks. Can they make money at that? And that's kind of like when you're dealing with those agents. It's like, can't you throw some kind of romantic connection into the book, please? Because they know, maybe this guy is a little off, but but they typically know what elements they want to see in these books that they know that the publishers will bite at it, so they know they're going to sell a certain number of copies. So my suggestion is carve out a chunk of your day, whatever your writing schedule is like, set 10 or 15% of that time aside, and start looking at some of these things. All the information you will ever need to know is online. It's free to look at. And there were resources, and I mentioned the Association of Rhode Island Authors, which is amazing. You've got 300 published authors in the group you can talk to anytime about these things. So I guess that kind of sets it up. So I'm not trying to be a downer. But I think you're going to be much happier in the long run when you know what you're up against rather than just kind of run into it blind. But thank you.
Thank you. Let's thank them and then we'll have time for Yeah, we'd be happy to open it up to questions. You can direct it at the whole panel or a specific individual.
Are there any better or worse platforms for different sort of types of written work? Let's say, is there a better platform to publish poetry opposed to short stories, opposed to essays, opposed to novels?
That is a good question. I think for ebooks, poetry is hard. You know, short stories can be tricky. You know, I think the financial depends what you're looking for. There's all sorts of different levels of and measures of success, right? So if you're talking financial success, which you can find in ebooks, believe it or not. I mean, you can make a living as an author in ebooks. I'm going to put that out there. I mean, you know, maybe not with your first book. I mean, you know, 2013 was a very different time than now. But if you are comfortable with finding a genre that is a strong seller on an ebook platform, you will be able to make a living. All right, so romance is a big one. Sci-fi fantasy is a big one. You can, if you're comfortable doing this, and this is something that not a lot of writers are comfortable with, but if you're comfortable doing this, you can access all sorts of information, like through a company, I think it's K-Lytics, send out reports. So you can sign up for a month or just buy separate reports about, you know, very specific genres and very specific, and they can really drill down to like, well, okay, paranormal romance is selling really well, but if you throw some werewolves in there, you're really gonna, you know, like you can drill down. Like there's data, like there's so many data points that are available. So in terms of the big money makers, you're seeing it in genre. Thriller's a big one, police procedurals. Really, the stuff that you see in, you know, airports, right? I mean, those are the big mass market sellers. That's what you're going to be making money on. Poetry, short stories, I mean, it's trickier, you know. It's a little bit more literary.
Submitting it to a magazine or you putting it on a blog, are those methods you can really immediately to make money off of poetry or essays or short stories? Right. What's the marketing like, or best practices behind maybe submitting, having a blog and keeping the blog, or going the magazine route if that's even still a thing?
Do you know what I would recommend?
Yes.
No. This is really important. Build your email list. You own that, okay? You know, Facebook changed their algorithms, and all of a sudden, all the people that you were reaching have poof. You have to pay to get them. You know, I do a lot of paid advertising. I've backed off because I'm in the middle of some very expensive editing work right now, so I've backed off of that, and I've seen my sales tank because of it. You know, but you know, but what's important is that email list that I've been building. So I know that I have direct reach out to these people. So if you have short stories, and part of the problem too is like, oh, I need to talk to my email list. What am I going to give them now? Like content, you're constantly generating content. But if you have a pile of short stories, do you know how much they're going to love that? And you just send it to them every month, and you're just like, here's something I wrote. Hope you enjoy it.
Or behind the scenes.
Yeah, or behind the
all
scenes
kinds of
stuff, whatever.
Stuff.
They will be so appreciative.
And who are these people? You said
You
email
got to
list,
just start building, right? So
Okay,
you're
so-
this is the tricky part. How do you
Network.
start building? And you can do all of this online, you know, but you're gonna have to give away. For the fastest way to do it is you're gonna have to give it away for free.
Another, oh, sorry.
There are, you know, I mean, that's usually, you know, sign up to my email list and get a free whatever it is that you're comfortable giving away. But always make sure, and because it's ebooks, you can change your back matter, you can change your information as much as you need to and re-upload it. Always at the end of your book, did you enjoy this? Come join my email list. And you can link in, and it'll go straight from your e-reader onto the internet into your page, where you can capture these email addresses.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I just wanted to get your thoughts about Amazon a little bit more as an independent bookstore owner. So people always say Amazon, you know, did say.
I take a very different view of Amazon than most independent bookstore owners. I consider them an ally and a partner. A lot of bookstore, because they're Amazon, it's like, you know, they won't order from, they won't consider, they won't look at them. I'll give you an example. We had a customer, if I go to Ingram is the nation's biggest book wholesaler. And as a bookstore, I can order essentially any book I want from Ingram. They offer me a 40% discount. If I go to Amazon, the new Elder Hildenbrand bestseller right now, Amazon's offering it 50% off.
To you?
To anybody.
Oh, okay.
So why would I order it at 40% off from my wholesaler when I can get it for 50% off from Amazon? So I use Amazon as a resource. If I have a customer standing in my store and wants a special order of a particular book, and Amazon has it, they don't want to order it from Amazon, I will. Because my job is to get them that book. And I think that the book selling industry skirted itself a long time ago when it rejected Barnes & Noble, it rejected Borders, it rejected Amazon, and they kind of threw up the wagons around the independent stores at that time. It was kind of self-preservation, but it did nothing for the book industry. And if you don't believe that, then look how the publishers have made out since, which is just fine.
Sort of connected to his question real quick, what's kind of interesting, and not to be a walking advertisement for KDP, but they are the easiest platform right now. They're also not perfect at everything. So if you want like a cloth-bound book, it's very hard to do that, I believe.
Through KDP, you can't.
Right, yeah. Like
Yeah, you have to
can't
publish,
do
you have to self-publish and then sell it as a merchant. Yeah.
And also color is basically, it would not be smart to do it through them. So like you can get almost any size, it can be, you know, as long as it's black and white, you can do, I mean, almost anything really. And they make it very simple, but there are certain things where it's like they just don't do it. And that's kind of cool because they've cut themselves off at certain points, and that allows other companies to kind of pick up. So if you wanted to have like a full color coffee book with, say, poetry in it, don't use Amazon.
Right.
I mean, really a local publisher. Like they will, or a printer literally. Like you can walk in there and talk with someone who's an expert in printing, and it's very personal. And that kind of project would just be very different. So just throwing that out there, is
Yeah.
that they can't do everything.
But even in that scenario, if you're doing that hardcover color poetry book, one of the problems is distribution.
Oh, they're huge problems, yeah.
Yeah,
But if you
yeah.
want that product, like
Because the nice thing about working with Amazon when you do that is that you flip a switch, you click a little button on your computer, and you're
Right.
suddenly for sale all over the world
right.
with one press of a button.
I know, it's absurd.
I assume though it's the same Ingram. Ingram has an independent arm
Mhm.
where you can, and I've heard, I haven't used it yet, I'm probably gonna use it on my next go around, that they do beautiful work, and I don't know if they offer, I think they offer large format prints,
Yep.
they offer
Yeah.
a lot of different
You
things.
can do hardcover.
Yeah, they do hardcover.
They call Ingram Spark.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
Ingram Spark,
Which
yeah.
is through Spark, you can do hardcover, you can do case laminate hardcover, you can do lots of other color options. And the advantages of using them is that they have a direct connection to all the bookstores in the United States.
And the
You go in
libraries.
their catalog.
And
the
libraries.
And the libraries, yeah.
Library sales are critical.
And with Baker Taylor now, the other big wholesale company in the United States kind of going belly up, Ingram is becoming even more important. So you do have a lot of options there. And Ingram is a good company to work with as well. They're just not Amazon. So you've got a few hurdles to check.
Great. I think we had a question. John, did you have a question?
It got answered.
You got answered? Great.
Okay, any other questions?
Question. Mike or anybody else, you said you can get an editor for a reasonable price. You've got an illustrator, what's a reasonable? I mean, I have no idea what's even.
Well, you would want to look up editorial services.
Right.
So somebody can just proofread a book or content editing, or if you want a manuscript critique, and those are all different.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess you have to shop around depending on where you go. My editor that I use for my books, and I also use her for other writers, is $1.75 a page, basically. That's kind of ballpark, but content
really
editing.
good.
Yeah.
That's really cheap.
What is she? What is she doing? Is it the developmental work, or is it more
More
copy
of the
editing?
more of copy editing.
Alright.
Like for my book, I'm crazy. I go through it so many times, and I really glean it down. So and plus I've written the other 3, so I know what my story's going to be, and she's read the other one. So it basically was a lot of just content editing. But for like a manuscript critique, that would be something completely different. You're going to take your work, and then you're going to read through it, and are the characters developing? Are they attaining their goals? Aside from grammar and spelling and all that kind of stuff, and that'll cost more. I don't do much of that, but she would do like $5, $6, $7 a page, depending on the size of the projects. And then there's all other ones in between. So depends on how far along your work is, and if a good editor would go through it and go, this is a copy editing piece of work, we can do that. Or it could be like, you got a lot of work still to do, and I would suggest whatever. And that would probably cost more. But that's kind of what you'd be looking at.
Is there some kind of marketplace or open house what you go to find, editors?
You can go to a place called Reedsy, REEDSY, and it's sort of like a marketplace where you can find, and they give a lot of information out for free. It's a really great resource, and they have editors on there. The editor that I'm currently working with, I didn't find her through there, but I noticed that she's got her stuff up there. And because of all the pinch, in the marketplace with the big 6 publishers, big 5, however many there are now, there are huge amounts of layoffs, and there are a lot of really amazing editors that worked at these big publishing houses out in the world doing freelance work. So, they're in New York, so they cost a lot more than somebody who is in, Ohio or someplace else. They're used to getting big fees, but you're getting some really experienced eyes on your work, and in particular, people that are experienced commercially in commercial work.
Yeah, I see a lot of times. So I go to a lot of Comic-Cons and writers' conferences and stuff like that, and I meet a lot of people there that are editors or publishers or in the industry. So a lot of times you meet these people, you do some research on them, and then you get a one-on-one with them. So you kind of use a relationship there. My editor, she's a little old lady from Memphis, Tennessee, that's retired, used to work for a small publishing house, I think in Milwaukee or whatever, and she just does things on the side to keep her busy outside of her volunteer work and things like that. And she's really good, but that's why it's so cheap. She's like, oh yeah, whatever, you make the price.
You make
But again, it was one thing I do at like presentations. Again, we all want to be, Stephen King writers, but the reality is we're not. So don't quit your day job yet. Okay. So, like I said before in the beginning, I'm an engineer, so that pays for all my bills and makes my wife happy and everything like that. So I can afford to do these for a little bit less on the side. Because like I said at the beginning, I like to help the writers. But yeah, if you go to New York, editors and stuff, you're going to pay a lot.
You're gonna pay a lot more.
So again, you have to, take a look. I like the one-on-one route. If I meet people and I get a good relationship with them and they happen to be an editor or something else, then you kind of have that relationship there. You can work it out that way.
There's a message board, K boards for it's Kindle boards, and there's yellow pages in there for editors and all sorts of stuff. So K boards has a whole yellow pages of editors, stuff like that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, question back here?
Questions from this side of the room?
Can we go back to the marketing stuff a little bit? When you were talking about doing the Facebook ads, so I'm trying to figure out MailChimp right now, and it seems like yeah. So I was wondering, where have you guys had
Is it a monkey on your back?
Yeah. It's at my top of my to-do list, and I keep ignoring it and going down to the next thing.
What's your sort of struggle with it?
Just basically I've got a podcast that I do children's stories on, and so I
Oh, I
want.
didn't know you. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I thought you looked familiar. Yeah.
And I'm trying to. I want to use it to build a mailing list, and I
Right.
just, it's funny because it's very hard to ask for somebody to buy your book when, and I'm going with Steve in Stillwater, so the book will be out in the fall hopefully, but it's just I'm trying to build that list beforehand by using the podcast. So I'm just kind of curious as to what's worked for you guys as far as marketing. I just did a Facebook ad, and it was funny because it doubled the listens for the podcast. I was just like, wow, it was $27, and they put it up for 10 days, and it's amazing how much it grew in that little bit of time, And then I joined a group called Kids Listen, which is a bunch of other podcasters that are all connected, and and that it went from 30 listens to 60 listens to I put it up last Friday, it's been 100 listens, so it's slowly growing, but it's so I've had success with that, but I know MailChimp now, they're doing it to where you can set up campaigns for different social medias and hit everything all at once. But it's a lot.
It is. I know these are very recent changes. I'm on MailChimp. I have not even gone near that yet. Like I said, I'm in the middle of editing and I'm like, oh geez, I can't, I can barely do, what. Okay, so I think that driving the listeners through the Facebook ads to your podcast is a really great idea. I know a lot of marketing people will say, oh, that's one step removed from what you actually want them to do, which is buy, right? There's always this idea that it needs to be the buy needs to be very click here, buy.
Yeah.
But I think in your case, what you need to do, you're trying to build trust. And so I think that even though you're not necessarily making money on the $27 that you spent on Facebook, you're driving them to your podcast. Now at the end of your podcast, wherever it lives, do you have something that you can create a downloadable? And so you can point people to wherever this downloadable lives and do a capture of that email address.
Okay.
So I don't, I don't know if it's going to be a short story. I don't know if it's, it's whatever it is that you come up with. I give away books, but I know people who have been successful who have just done a character description or a very long sort of character study in a PDF, and people will grab that. So it's like, I think that might be the sort of quickest way to get people, and because you've already got your audience and you want them to sort of join your list, but then once they join your list, you need to keep, you need to be active, you know, again, this is again a lot of content, right? You gotta generate a lot of content, and this in itself could be a full-time job. So what is great with MailChimp is that you can set up just campaigns or autoresponders so that after they join your list, in another couple of days, you can just do, and it's all on an automatic loop. Hey, did you enjoy that? I hope you did. You know, here's my favorite podcast episode, go give this a listen. So then you can kind of use your, use your archives, which is always nice too. You know, so what you want to do is like build up those couple of contacts in an engaging way, but it's all on auto, so you don't necessarily have to worry about it. If that makes sense? Or
no, yeah, I mean, I'm glad to hear that somebody else uses MailChimp too, because it's just like to speak to somebody that's actually dealt with it, as opposed to, you know, building your list and things like that. Because you hear it as like every piece of advice is build your list, build your list, build your list. But the actual structure of doing that sometimes, you know, like
I find it incredibly confusing.
Exactly.
What, MailChimp or list building?
There's the mechanics of MailChimp, and it's whatever its rival was. I've worked with that for a little while.
Constant Contact.
Yes.
Ask Emma. Yeah.
It can be very, and also very overbearing. They'll like call you at home. I mean, just like it's just such a weird kind of thing. I had MailChimp people calling me all the time. It was
really?
Yeah.
Upsell.
Anyway, so paperless post is also an alternative where they have a lot of the good stuff, but it's not nearly as complicated. It's just like very, very direct. It doesn't look as good. It doesn't have like the bells and whistles, or any of like the super complex metrics. But if you're just looking to start out, they're owned by MailChimp, so that makes it. It's like you can graduate. You master this, and then you move on to the next thing.
I swear it was the week after I signed up for it too, they changed it. I was like, are you kidding me?
But you're grandfathered into whatever because you signed on beforehand. Like you're grandfathered into whatever it is that you got, and I know that it's still X amount free. Like that's why MailChimp is like you can play around with it until you hit a certain number, and then you have to start paying.
And Karen, who is a PR person here in town, will be at our next panel on publicity and press.
You got a book coming out, so you should come.
Yeah. Along with two other PR experts, Tess Woods, who's coming down from Boston, and Marilyn Bush, who some of you might know, she's also local. So that's July 13th, Saturday afternoon. Mike, could I ask a quick question just in terms of, could someone address time frame from like the point where you think you are ready to move forward, you're done with your draft, to publishing, in terms of all the formatting and illustrating and editing? If your goal is to publish something in October, is that a reasonable goal if you were starting today? Or what kind of time frame would you give yourself as a self-publisher?
Well, that all depends on, again, what you want to try to accomplish. So there are a lot of pieces to put together. So, like I mentioned before, let's assume that you have your manuscript finished, okay? So now you need to get your editor involved. So you have to go through that process. You also need a cover design. So we need another person involved in that, unless you're doing it yourself, but probably not. So you need an artist. Then you need someone to format the book if you're not doing it yourself, and all those other pieces. So let's say you wanted to have a book out for Christmas. Okay, so let's use mine for an example. I want to have my book out for Rhode Island Comic Con, November 1st, which would be the 4th book in the series. That's going to end the whole series. Can I go end the series? You never know. But you have to start working backwards. If I want books on November 1st, well, I better be making my order by October 1st to get how many books I want. So if I want books by October 1st, then I have to have everything uploaded and everything finished. Well, if I need things uploaded, well, the editorial services have to be finished. The formatting has to be finished. The cover design has to be finished. And don't think the first time you upload everything, it's going to be done that time. No. There are caveats. You'll go through, like we said with Amazon, they'll have a proofer, and you'll go through, you can either buy a proof book, or you can do an online proof, and there's all, this needs to be fixed, this needs to be fixed, this needs to be fixed. So you gotta go back to your manuscript, you gotta go back to your artist, you gotta go back. So you got to pad some time in there too. So you need to really become an expert at time management, because if you're saying, I'm going to have this book out November 1st, and you start doing the process in September, and you haven't done it before, you're going to fail. You're going to fail. Steve could probably give you a better example of a real time frame, because he does so many more books. But on a personal level, those are the things you need to keep in mind. And a lot of us have daytime jobs, and we're trying to do this at night, and we have families and stuff like that. And then if you really want to get something out and you go on your own time crunch, just keep that in mind.
I'd say just the two things that eat time are if you're doing a kid's book or you're working with an illustrator, it takes a long time to get those illustrations exactly where you want them. And so you have to leave and you never know. So, sometimes you get lucky, but that does take time. And second, if you're working with editing, more developmental or content editing, well, if that editor comes back and is suggesting all kinds of rewrites and changes, it takes time. So once from the point you have the perfect manuscript, and if there's not a lot of formatting to do, if it's a straight up novel or something like that, it can be done very quickly. But if it's the editing and the illustrations, they really slow it down.
It's all the things you don't think about. Like, okay, get this done. Let me just put that up there, and then you got to go through all these iterations of fixing things within the manuscript, not editing it. It's just the bleed is wrong, or this page goes off, or the file that you uploaded for your author photo isn't the right DPI. It's things like that, and then you're like, oh, where's my photographer? Well, I got to get a new picture. It's going to be grainy, So it's things like that. But again, the beauty of self-publishing is you make your own deadlines. So before you say, yes, I'm going to be at such and such a show in 2 weeks with new books, I'm sure you're going to be there with new books. But I like to, don't cross this line. All right, well, it's going to be this date. Well, I missed that one. It's okay. It's okay. I mean, you don't have to drive yourself crazy, but just keep that in mind. If you do have a major event that you want to make, you got to put the time beforehand, because there's always hiccups.
The one nice thing about the Pittsburgh publisher, well, there were many nice things but the thing that has stuck with me that I think works across all publishing and really literary arts in general is he was like, we can't rush this because this book is going to be around forever. If there are paperback copies, like they're going to be remaindered, they're going to be in libraries, they're going to be there forever. And if you have a misspelling on the cover, it's always going to be there. If you have a character, typos. If the story isn't exactly what you want it to be, fiction, nonfiction, poetry, whatever, graphic novels, it's like that is always going to be there, and you have to make sure that it is precisely what you want, and that shouldn't ever be rushed.
That said, yes. However, with ebooks, you can fix things.
That's true.
And I will say, if you have, analysis paralysis like I do, you have to let that go and know, you know what? You are going to have a typo in your book.
Right.
You're going to. And some reader is going to find it.
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to send you a really nasty email. Or even worse, they're going to put a really nasty review up on Amazon.
And they're so proud. They're so proud they found it. They're so proud.
1 star. What is? Doesn't she know the English language? It's not going to be perfect. Put it up. Put it up, because or else you're just not going to do it. And do it. Get your work out there. And you know what? If they spot a typo, oh, your eagle eyes, thank you so much. And fix it and upload your new copy. I mean, that's like the beautiful part of the ebook world is like you can honestly, I put up my 3rd book and I just did an ebook. I got really lazy. I didn't feel like dealing with my cover design or the formatting of the book. Nobody noticed for a year until a reader emailed me and she's like, I love your books, but I can't get this one and it's not in paperback. I felt so bad that I sent her a free copy. I was like, I hurried up and did everything, and then I sent her a free copy. But like, you know, like, so if there were any typos that people caught, it was all fixed by the time I sent her the copy. But you know, a lot of people are buying ebooks. They're buying the ebooks, and you can change those. You can fix those if you made
It's an
an
organic
error.
quote.
You can with print-on-demand paperback too.
And you can, yeah, exactly.
Because you're ordering them as you need them. So if you're ordering 50, you're only printing 50, and you can always order more later. You can still update those files. Now you want them, but you still want the work to go out as correct as it can be when you first do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the mistakes I know that a lot of first-time authors make is they get the first proof of the first book for the first time. You know, it's better than having a kid. And you're so excited. It's like, oh, this is how long has it been? It looks great. Looks great. And you got to kind of pull in the reins. Take your time, read through it one last time.
And don't trust that your editor's going to find everything. I
No.
made that mistake. And don't trust that.
I know I'm friends with a former senior copy editor at Random House who says that every book she ever edited had a mistake in it. Everyone. But you don't have the luxury as a self-published author to explain that to a reader.
Because you are going to be held to a way higher standard than the big publishing houses. That I will say. You are almost upheld to, I see errors in big 5 books all the time. And I just know, though, oh my God, I could never get away with that. So you are going to be held to a higher standard. But like I said, it's all fixable. So don't let that sort of stop you. Don't freak out about it and let that stop you.
Can I ask each of you just to quickly give your number one lesson learned about pricing that you learned from your own experience about pricing, cover pricing, or pricing online?
Cool.
I would say it's a tough question because I would say as an independent, there's kind of a magic of finding the right price for your work.
Yeah.
But I would say as an independent, self-published author, don't undervalue your work. It's okay because if someone comes up to you or they want to buy it, whether it's $17, $18, $19, let's say a full-size paperback, it isn't going to make any difference. If they want to buy it, they're going to buy it at 16 or if it's 18. It really doesn't make a difference. People think it does. People think, oh, I've got to drop it another $1 or $2 or $3, and you're nuts. You will still sell that book. The average price for a traditional house paperback right now is $24. So if you're published through Random House, your paperback could be $18, $20, $24. That's the way the books go, and paper is rising, and the tariffs are coming, and it's going to get worse. So don't undervalue your work.
Yeah, I originally did my book for $20, and then I was finding, well, it's actually better priced at $15. Basically, because a lot of the people that read are kids and stuff, and that's about a good price. But it's exactly right. Don't just because you're not Stephen King or something. Hey, I got a good book and it's a bargain. Like, no, and sometimes it's, well, why is it so cheap? Is it any good? So, you can go to the bookstores and see how much books that are in your genre are going for. And you should, pretty much place it in there. But don't, it costs X amount of dollars to make a book. I think mine, they're roughly $7 and change, plus the shipping, so about $7.50 a book. And I'm selling for $15, so I'm making 50%, which is good.
And you compare that to royalties that you would get from a traditional publisher, and it's
not getting 50%.
comical. It's like I think the standard is like 15%.
Yeah.
And it's just like it's like $1 a book basically, and it's if you're lucky, and like a successful run for most presses is like 2,000 copies. Like that's great. So you're looking at $2,000 for the years of work that you put into this, if it does great. And so like compared to this kind of model, if you pull it off, it's like you're essentially like an investor in the company. Like you're hoping to, the potential is pretty good.
Yeah, another thought on pricing too. When you bring your books to a lot of bookstores, they're going to require it be sold on consignment. They're not going to just buy them outright from you.
Oh yeah.
Which means they're going to keep 40% of the retail, the cover price. So you've got to make sure that whatever 60% of your cover price is gives you a sufficient margin that you're going to make a few dollars at least selling it at that store.
What's a percentage again?
What's that?
But what's the percentage that you take?
It's usually 60-40. They keep 40%.
Okay.
I think I'm a little bit more dynamic pricing again because, you know, it can be quicker when you're an ebook. You can change everything very quickly. I tend to keep an eye on the market, what my competitors are selling for, what people are buying, selling for, what the bestsellers are moving for. You know, that said, my older books, I'll drop the price when I release a new book. You know, I write in series, so I always want to, people, you know, like right now, my first book in the series now on ebook is free because I have enough out. And I want people to start, and I want them, and the idea is that they're just going to keep reading and reading and reading. And that's the hope. So for pricing, it's, you know, I can be a little bit more fluid. What I do with the paperbacks is I just price them so that I get the same royalty amount as if people were buying my ebook. Because I assume I'm going to be selling ebooks, that's where I make my money. I don't worry so much about the print copies, so they're actually relatively low, I think, in terms of, you know, books that are out there on Amazon and places like that. But depending on what you're pricing, your royalty is going to change. Like if you charge, I think it's like under $1.99 or under on Amazon, you only get 30% royalty versus 70% as long as you're over it. So again, it's also based on your goals and your genre. If you have volume readers, you can price it cheaper because you're going to be making that up in terms of buys.
Now, let's say I got my book, I've published it on Kindle, let's say I went through Amazon, and I also had a few hard copies, you know, published, so I have those in hand. What do I do with them now? How do I get other people to sell my hard copies? Is there a best practice to approaching stores?
Oh my God.
On your knees.
Go to him.
Well, you'll find every independent bookstore is different. Some are extremely friendly to independent authors. They love having the books in the stores. I'll mention, you know, off the top of my head, Wakefield Books down in Wakefield. Bob is tremendous as far as if you're a local author, he wants to do everything he can to help you out.
No kidding.
Really?
Barrington Books has always been good to a lot of the authors that we've published. And then I won't mention those stores that are not so friendly. And one in particular who will take your book only on consignment and charge you a $35 shelf fee.
What?
No.
A shelf fee?
Shelf fee. So in order to have your book in their store, you have to pay them $35, and then they'll keep 40% of everything that sells. And I can, you know, that's.
How much shelf do I get for that?
Yeah. And then, you know, and then most stores, I don't want to say most, but there are a couple of stores, one major store in Massachusetts, who will take it in, 60-40 deal, they'll keep it for 90 days. And if they don't see significant sales in those 90 days, they're gonna call you and say, come get them.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna put something else in that place. So every bookstore has its own little personality. Barnes & Noble, I could talk for half an hour about. If you walk into B&N, especially with a CreateSpace, Amazon, KDP created book, they're gonna say no. But then I can give you 3 or 4 examples of how to get them to say yes. But it takes a while to work that out.
Jessica, did you have a question? Oh, you didn't. Anyone else?
I guess if you do want to sell physical books, we should probably talk about the ISBN bracket.
Yep.
You're going to need one.
Yep, you are.
Amazon, I believe, will assign you one if you're selling, if I remember correctly. They will assign you one. They assign their own Amazon AISN numbers, so that's free. But if you want physical books anyplace else, you are going to have to buy your ISBN numbers, and those I still find very confusing.
If as an independent author, self-published author, you go out there to buy your ISBN by yourself, it's going to cost you, I think it's $135 just for one ISBN. And it's something, it's an investment you want to make. You want your own ISBN on that book. Then you are the publisher, and that book in all the metadata forever will connect you, your publisher, whatever your publishing name is, and that ISBN together. When you allow, Amazon will give you one, I don't know, I think it's for free or.
Yeah, it's free.
You know, they'll assign one to you, but in that same metadata that connects to books and print through Bowker, that metadata shows Amazon as being the owner of that book. Now, to date, I don't know of anyone who's had a problem with that, but it feels very wrong.
Yep.
You know, you want to own your own stuff. You know, you don't want Amazon show it as the publisher. And someone, even someone logs in now to books, you'll see, you know, go to Amazon, look up books, and you'll see them with the publisher's name listed as CreateSpace or KDP and other things, and you know right away. So you can put your own imprint on it, your own name. But that's why it's one of those things that, you know, the publishing industry doesn't want you all buying ISBNs, so they're going to make it as expensive as possible.
We had a question over here.
So you mentioned Vellum for Mac users for formatting. What do you use for Word? Is it just Microsoft Word, or how do you do the formatting?
Oh, okay, so my process is I start in Scrivener,
Okay.
and then I have to send it to editors, and they want the MS Word, so I do edits in MS Word.
Okay.
And then once that is a clean file, I have about 1,000 files, because I'm always afraid of losing something. I upload that into Vellum, and then Vellum spits out all formatted work, whatever it is. Now, when I did it myself, I can't even remember how I did it, but I did it in Microsoft Word, and it was all sorts of follow this margin, and then how to connect your, you know, when you click on chapter 5, it goes to chapter 5. That was, oh my God, that was painful. And just sort of doing that linking and stuff like that, it was an ordeal. I just remember being like, but Vellum does all of that for you, but you can do your own formatting, do your own formatting.
That's so for ebook. So if you're trying to do it for a paperback book.
Oh, Vellum also has a paperback. We'll also do it paperback. On Amazon, they have, you upload the MS Word, right? And
You can do MS Word or a PDF.
or a PDF, yeah, usually PDF is better.
Let me throw in a recommendation for the software LibreOffice, which is free and cross-platform. It'll run on Windows, it'll run on Mac, it'll run on Linux, and it will directly export, because it's built into the software, EPUB and PDF.
What's it called again?
LibreOffice, LibreOffice, and you can get it from LibreOffice.org for free. It's a free download.
Cool.
And there are also optional plugins for it, which allow other export formats, but PDF and EPUB are directly built in, and things like managing links, indices, and all that are there. It'll export to docx, ODT is its native format, so it's completely compatible with things like Microsoft Word as well. So you can make a file, you can export a file that is readable to anybody who has Microsoft Word or any similar type of software.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Maybe one more question, if anyone has one.
Oh, could I also make a
Yeah,
suggestion?
sure.
So make sure you copyright your work.
Yeah.
It's been with some plagiarism issues that have
Massive plagiarism issues.
There's some small plagiarism that have come up recently in the ebook world. It's a weird little world it's turned into, hasn't it? Sometimes Amazon demands to see proof that that is your work, and your proof is going to be your copyright. I think it's $35. So worth it. Just submit it, and you're good to go. It's pretty simple, and you get a little official piece of paper backwards if you want it.
Hidden words one would have some copyrighted.
Google it, Copyright Office, and it's actually all online, and you can, I think, upload it. You don't have to mail anything.
Yeah, you go to the U.S. Copyright
Yeah.
Office, like, and they have a place where you can do your own copyright. Not all the questions are obvious, and it takes a little bit of sleuthing to figure out the right way to do it, but the form isn't long.
Yeah.
And you upload your file. You can either upload your file, or they prefer you can mail them a hard copy. They want your best final version of your book. But having that document is a very, very good idea. Under U.S. copyright law, if you're not paying attention and scribbling a poem on your notebook right now, that poem is still copyrighted to you. It is still your work, original work. But to have that document, if you ever get in trouble, is so valuable. It's worth the effort.
Any last comments from our panel, or anything else we might have missed? All right, thank you all so much for being here.